Welcome to Life in the Law on ThinkTech Hawaii. I'm your host, Jay Fidell. Today we'll talk about the fight of my generation, and that refers to the fight of Anne Lopez. Attorney General Anne Lopez is going to bring us current on what is going on. And our guest for the show is, of course, Anne Lopez. Welcome to the show, Anne.
Well, thank you for the invitation, Jay. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure. It's an honor on many levels to have you here. Many people are concerned, if not depressed, about what Trump and Musk are doing. And it is important that we stay current on the legality of what they are doing because questions have arisen. And the litigation, which has been initiated in various places, in various courts, to oppose their orders and actions. So I do have a few questions for you. Attorney General of the state, that is something that you should address these issues. But how do Trump's actions affect Hawaii? What do you see as the threat?
The threat is a continuum of extreme to less extreme. So let's start with our constitutional rights. Hawaii has a very large immigrant community. His executive order ending birthright citizenship would have affected every immigrant child born in the state of Hawaii going forward. It's a constitutional right that each person has being born in the United States. You're automatically a citizen. So that was the very first one, first executive order that he did that we, as the group of Democratic attorneys general, filed a lawsuit in. The next thing is the freeze in the federal funding. About 20% of the state of Hawaii's budget comes from federal funds. And much of those funds filter out from the state to various nonprofit organizations that provide various services to the state, from wildfire mapping management to child welfare service checks. So those monies range. It's probably, I think every subject in our state, federal funds touch in one way or another. And to have all of those monies frozen without any notice just created a level of chaos that was completely unnecessary. And we're still dealing with that chaos every day because, notwithstanding the TRO, the temporary restraining order, and the preliminary injunctions that are in place, the federal government and its various departments are still freezing funds. So we still have state agencies who are going onto their federal website and they can't draw down funds.
You and many other people have said that the the people affected by these various executive orders uh, haven't had any notice. But would it be different if you had notice? Would you feel differently? I know I would not feel differently myself. But what would the difference be if you had notice?
With respect to the federal funding in particular, that would allow organizations to either scale down their operations or the state to scale back its requirements and its contracts. So the funding freeze is a big part of it. There is no way, notice is not going to help us if we lose half of our Medicaid funds. Those folks are going to have a difficult time getting insurance, and to continue to provide health insurance, especially to children, which I believe should just be a non-question, is going to cost the state a lot of money. But we should anticipate that some of this is going to happen. On March 14th is the end of the continuing resolution for the budget. So it could be that the federal government shuts down if there is not any kind of a compromise or an agreement. And then on October 1st is the beginning of the federal budget year, their fiscal year, and that budget will reflect President Trump's priorities. So we do have a little bit of forewarning of what's going to be happening over the next 4 years, and we'll have to make some real adjustments to changes that are being made. Some of his actions that I think are unprecedented and completely unexpected, really involve the Department of Government Efficiency and Elon Musk's activities. I don't think anybody anticipated that he would allow a billionaire and his adolescent acolytes to come into the Treasury Department, to OMB, to Social Security, CMS, and just start rummaging through all of the electronic data that houses the personal information of every single American, from their Social Security number to their health insurance, Medicaid, and Medicare.
You mentioned the magic word, Social Security, and we've seen the attack on Medicaid already, and Medicare is not far behind, and Social Security has been discussed. A lot of people that I know are living on Social Security. I'm living on Social Security, and I'm terrified that one day, without notice, it'll be cut off. Will you be involved in litigation on that one?
That's a good question. What I would need to think about really, and the Democratic attorneys general meet on a daily basis. We talk about the most recent issues that are arising. And one of the discussions is, do we have standing to bring a lawsuit as a state? Are we being harmed as a state that would allow us to bring the lawsuit?
Mm,
And so I don't have an answer with respect to Social Security. We certainly, with respect to the federal funds, brought a lawsuit based on the Medicaid freezing of funds, and that was part of what we used for that as the basis of that case, because that absolutely affects the state because we pay a portion of that. Social Security, we don't. So I'd have to think about that a little bit.
okay. How do these cases work? I mean, your office is involved. I know you have more than 100 lawyers there, so you have the resources to deal with them. But how do they work as far as your efforts, the efforts of your staff are concerned? Is it a matter of writing an amicus, filing an amicus? Do you appear in court? Do you argue at the TRO arguments or the preliminary injunction arguments? What's the effort like for you?
Well, it's a collaborative effort with 22 other Democratic attorneys general. With each of the lawsuits or each of the issues that have come up, our strategy is generally to collaborate and come into these as a force, a strong force. So we have conversations about what state might want to take lead on a particular issue. And that will depend. There may be some attorneys general who have very passionate feelings about a particular issue and they want to take lead on that. We also talk about sort of what the resources are that are necessary to successfully bring that suit. So we generally have more than one state taking lead. There may be two or three, and the staffs of those attorneys general offices are the ones responsible for preparing all of the documents, sending them out to all of the different AG offices for review and comment. In those cases where we're not a lead, one of the things that is important for us to do is to gather the information, the evidence, as it were, to demonstrate why we have standing in a particular case. And so that may involve talking to the University of Hawaii to find out which of their grants have been frozen. uh, every single one of our departments have experienced problems with funding. So we've gone to those departments and those agencies to obtain declarations where they kind of lay out the facts of what the issues are. Our department took lead on an amicus brief related to fork, the fork directive. Do you remember that? That was the either resign in 6 days or plan to get fired sometime in your near future. We did not have standing in that case because we don't represent federal employees. So we did take lead on filing an amicus brief in support of those federal employees. And my staff, I have about 10 people who are devoting much of their time to these issues. They were able to write a really phenomenal brief and get 20 other states to join us in that amicus. We filed that, and then the trial court judge did not allow anybody to intervene in the case. So the Republican AGs also prepared an amicus, but he didn't let anybody actually intervene. So we made the effort. I think we made it clear that we're in support of federal employees and their public service, but we weren't able to go further than that.
So, yeah, you don't go unopposed. People will oppose you. The Republican attorneys general, I guess, or attorneys general of Republican states will oppose you. And do you have opposition from them on all these cases?
I don't think we have actually on any of the cases where the attorneys general have taken lead and were the party. I think the opposition has only come from the federal government at this point.
And the federal government, of course, is the Department of Justice, which is funded by our tax money. I just want to make that statement. Yeah. So, how many cases are you involved in right now, and in what jurisdictions?
So I think we have 5 cases right now, and they are all in the First Circuit at this point. There is an AG's case that's in the Ninth Circuit, but we did not join that case. So we're in a case related to the EO ending birthright citizenship. We're in the case of the OMB memo where all of the federal funds were frozen. That is in the First Circuit, and I think uh, I may get it wrong, so I'm not going to say what state it's in. We're in what we call the uh, Department of Government Efficiency 1, which is the initial beginning moments where Elon Musk went into the Treasury and had access to the files related to trillions of dollars in payments. That also included our Social Security information and so forth. We are in what we call the Department of Government Efficiency 2 case. That case was brought by the lead on that case was the Attorney General from New Mexico. In that case, we were arguing that Elon Musk is exercising power that is well beyond that of a temporary government employee. And we argue that an employee making the kinds of decisions that he's making requires appointment and Senate confirmation. Excuse me. We sought a TRO. The district judge in that case denied the TRO, and basically in his order provided a roadmap for what we needed to do. So we weren't he wasn't going to allow the emergency relief, but the case is still moving forward. And so we're beginning discovery on that now. We are part of the National Institute of Health case. That's where the NIH stopped the funding for indirect costs for all grantees. And the indirect costs are the monies that are used by universities predominantly that can be used across all of their grants to fund buildings, uh, purchase equipment that can be used for all of the different grant activity. As an example, right now, UH's UH's indirect cost funding is at about 56%. Based on what NIH did, the funding across the board for every organization would be 15%. So that 40% cut would be it would just be catastrophic for the university, and it would be catastrophic for uh, research all across the country into health and medical care.
Yeah, that ultimately affects health and medical care, doesn't it?
Well,
And
it's the research that goes to finding cures to cancer and making our lives better for sure.
so you talk about the 23 attorneys general involved. Are there other groups of attorneys general that are operating in other litigation? Are there individual litigants operating in other litigation? I imagine there must be cases all over the country from one plaintiff or another involving these issues. Am I right?
Yes, they're brought by labor unions. They're brought by I think that I just saw Earth Justice is participating in a lawsuit related to some climate change funds that were frozen. So the lawsuits are being brought by everyday people who are being affected by all of these activities. With respect to the attorneys general, if an attorney general wants to pursue a particular litigation on their own, they're welcome to do that by
Mm.
participating as a group. There's no rule that people can't also pursue their own litigation. An example in this case, I think, is Washington State took lead in a suit against the. There's an executive order related to transgender care, affirming transgender care. The EO basically not only stopped funding for those things, but potentially criminalized the conduct related to those things. So Washington State took lead because their University of Washington does a lot of gender affirming care. And they do have federal grants. And so the threat was they would lose all of that funding. In Hawaii, I have recently, over the last few days, heard that gender affirming care in Hawaii may be affected, but at that time, I hadn't heard none of those complaints. So we really didn't have standing to join. Washington was also somewhat unique based on what their laws are that are different than ours. So you'll see that the attorneys general will do what they think is best in their state, but also I think all of us are committed to working collectively as to to bring greater force to bear.
You did file an amicus on the transgender military case, right?
Yes, we did. I'm not sure if a TRO has been filed on that or not.
It strikes me that with your cases, your 5 cases, and all the other cases, that these various cases in various jurisdictions by various litigants are at different stages. They're at the TRO stage, maybe they're at the injunction stage. How far have they gotten? It's only been a month, since he was inaugurated. So I imagine that a lot of them haven't gotten all that far. Can you give me a handle on what the status of these cases are in general? How far have they gotten?
Right, citizenship cases moved the furthest. And in that case, the Trump administration has filed an appeal in the First Circuit from the preliminary injunction issued by the district court in that case. So that appeal has been filed. I don't know what the timeline is for that. I was going to say most of the cases are either preliminary injunctions have been issued or we're still waiting for decisions by the district court on what what the order is going to be, whether or not they're going to grant the relief that's being sought.
A footnote to that is it would be so much more efficient if Congress would deal with this instead of having litigation all over the country at various stages of development. And Congress is, we all know, Congress is AWOL on this. And what strikes me is that it's not a perfect storm here because some of these judges, some of these courts are not giving you or giving the litigants, however many there are, the relief they are seeking. And you see it in the paper every couple of days where some judge decides, no, he's not going to give any relief. What is that like? And why? And what does it represent in terms of the legal process in the country?
It doesn't mean that the case has ended and it's dead in the water at that point. In most cases, the litigants are seeking a temporary restraining order. And so that emergency relief has very specific elements that you have to prove, and in particular, that you will be irreparably harmed if you don't get the restraining order. In some cases, like for instance, the case brought by the New Mexico Attorney General taking lead, where we didn't get that TRO, that's what the judge said is he didn't see the immediate harm that we would suffer. So the TRO was not issued. So the case is still continuing. We'll still go into discovery and we will keep pushing this. So we're all still moving forward. We have actually received, I think we've obtained TROs and preliminary injunctions in most of our cases.
Is the government respecting those orders?
Absolutely not.
Oh, really? We've heard that. Yeah. So what
Um,
do they do? Just to blow you off? Blow the judges off? How does that work?
in different ways. I think the easiest way to see it is with this funding freeze. We still have agencies all over the state who can't withdraw or draw down their federal funds that have already been appropriated by Congress for them to spend on the programs that Congress has deemed appropriate for those funds. So that's the biggest area is we still see those frozen funds. Now, if we make it known that we know these funds are frozen, then sometimes they're unfrozen and agencies can't get to the funds, but then other funds might freeze. Or the very latest is they'll make $1 available in funds. And if you want more than that, you have to go through that certification process that you rid your program of all programs that might involve um, diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility.
So the government is appealing or trying to appeal injunctive relief. Is that really appealable? I know one case got to the Supreme Court, and they rejected Trump's position on it, rejected the appeal with the dissent of what was it, Thomas and Alito. But don't you think they're going to appeal everything they can just to buy time?
Sure, I think they will. And this is where I think a lot of everybody's fear stems from is the judicial branch is the check on excessive power of acting unconstitutionally and acting illegally. And we're all very, very aware that this Supreme Court has shown a deference to President Trump and to the presidential power. And so we're all nervous to see how they're going to respond to these cases. At the end of the day, I have to trust that our three branches of government are strong and the judiciary will step up and do the right thing. If they don't, then they're actually putting themselves in a position of the judiciary is no longer necessary if they keep allowing the power of the president to grow. So I'm hopeful that they'll step up to the plate and we will get decisions in our favor.
You find that the judges, federal judges, are politicized. In other words, somebody who was appointed by a Republican governor is less likely to give you relief, and somebody who was appointed by a Democratic governor is more likely. Do you find that there's a politicization?
I think it varies. I'll say that the attorney or the judge in the Washington gender affirming care case was appointed by Ronald Reagan. And on the bench, he said it was the most unconstitutional suit he had ever seen in his life in 40 years. So I think that they are out there, and I think that they trust that this is really a tipping point in our country. The judiciary has to stand up, and they have to take the time they need to ensure that any excess power is truncated and reduced or stopped in their tracks through their orders.
You know, we've entitled this "The Fight of My Generation," and the "my" refers to you, Anne. And I just wonder why you say that. What is your motivation? What drives you to conclude that this is the fight of your generation?
Well, it's certainly, I think, the most important fight that has occurred related to our democracy and our Constitution in my lifetime. My mom, whose age I won't say because she would kill me, uh, watched watched the arc of rights for women grow and grow and grow until 2016 and what's happening today. It is clear that the generations before me fought for what we have, fought for the rights that we have, and fought to give us the wonderful life that I've had. And I can I can do nothing other than put my heart and soul into this fight because it is truly it will truly change America if we start losing some of these rights and the presidential power grows unchecked. And this will be my passion until I'm out of this job.
Well, it's a perfect intersection for any lawyer, but especially for you, to have the opportunity to be there and be supported by Josh Green, I suppose, and the state of Hawaii in general, so that you can go down the road on this mission. It is really important. And let me ask you this though. Look, it's the Charles Dickens Ghost of Christmas Future question. What happens if some courts agree and other courts don't agree? The Supreme Court does not, you know, back up the limitation on these powers. What happens to the country? I'm sure you've thought about that.
I certainly have, and in my position as the attorney general, I'm not going to speculate about what happens to our
Fair.
country. Uh, I see myself being incredibly depressed, and the country really struggling from everything from being able to grow food and sustain ourselves to having life-saving medical care to being able to make decisions about our bodies, to have public education for children. All of us are going to be impacted in a way that I think at the moment might be unimaginable.
Yeah, unimaginable. That's a good word for it. So this is a test. It's an inflection point, not only for the executive branch and for the legislative branch, but for the judicial branch, and that's what we're left with. And that's why, everybody says, well, we can't go to Congress these days. That's not going to work. And the executive branch is creating, well, the tumult. So it has to be the judicial branch. This is a test for the legal profession, for the attorneys general of the various states, and for the judges in the various courts. This is our last great hope right now. Do you agree?
Absolutely. Yes. I'm
N-
hopeful that at some point, Republican Congress people will step up to the plate. They have as much to lose as every blue state when it comes to the loss of Medicaid funds, SNAP funds, research for life saving medical care. We all have the same issues. And I'm hopeful that at some point, Republican Congress people will um, come to their senses. Or if not, that in 2026 we will be able to change and shift the balance in the House at the very least.
Yeah, God willing, we have midterms in 2026. There's one thing that you covered in your discussion with Catherine Cruz on Hawaii Public Radio that I would like to ask about. And you said that there's plenty of work to be done. It's not limited to what you're doing now. It's not limited to the cases you're involved in now. It's not limited to the issues we have because this keeps on going. And whatever Donald Trump wakes up with in a given morning, he could do that too. And so your actions, your defense of the Constitution and the country are only starting. And what do you see going forward?
I see a lot of hard work. I know that in my department, I'm surrounded by close to 200 deputies, attorney general, who believe in public service, who believe in defending the state of Hawaii and making sure that Hawaii's laws and constitution are properly carried out. So, from my position as the attorney general in the state of Hawaii, I have a lot of faith and belief in this department. We will step up. We will continue to fight these fights, and we'll take care of each other in the process. When somebody gets burnt out or just can't take the stress anymore, then they can step out for a little while and somebody will step in and take their place. I am confident that I have the complete support of the state legislature. They've already made that clear when they've been talking about my budget and funding. And it is absolutely clear that I have the support of Governor Green. These are the fights that he has always fought for from the time he was a senator through the present. And so I think as a state, we're going to be moving forward and we're going to take care of each other and we're going to try and take care of the people of Hawaii as we do it.
Yeah, Hawaii is a very federal place where we don't realize how connected we are to Washington and to all these programs that are being undermined. Anyway, I want to say that you speak for all of us, Anne, and you act for all of us, and your work as Attorney General is really for all of us. And everyone I know, appreciates your service to the bottom of our hearts.
Well, thank you very much. And I take that very seriously and recognize that I'm in a role right now that I certainly never expected to be in, but I believe that I have the leadership skills and the intelligence and the ability to lead this fight for the next several years.
We're with you. We'll have to leave it there, Anne. Thanks so much to our guest, Anne Lopez, Attorney General of the state of Hawaii. I'm Jay Fidell, host of Life in the Law. We've been discussing the fight of my generation. Anne Lopez, Attorney General. Thank you so much to our viewers for watching. We'll see you again soon for the next one. Aloha.